revenge stories.
Imagine this. You've just bought your dream home in the heart of the city. You're excited, hopeful, and ready to start a new chapter in life. But before you can even unpack your bags, you find out your neighbor, a bitter, entitled old man, has been secretly stealing from you for years. And when you finally fight back, you don't just stop him, you destroy everything he thought he could rely on. If you've ever been wronged by someone who thought they could get away with it, hit that like button and subscribe. Because today, you're about to hear one of the most satisfying revenge stories that proves karma comes for everyone, eventually. Buying a house should be one of the happiest moments of your life. For me, it was supposed to be just that. I live in Asia, in the middle of a busy capital city, a place where property prices skyrocket, where every inch of land feels like gold. But somehow, through a stroke of luck and timing, I managed to buy a place at a price most people would kill for. The previous owners, family friends of mine, they had fallen into some financial trouble, needed cash urgently, and hadn't lived in the country for almost 3 years. Their house had sat abandoned all that time. The walls were unfinished, renovations had been left half complete, and the front door wasn't even locked with a proper lock, just a cheap padlock dangling. They're like a weak suggestion of security. Still, it was mine. My first house. I could feel the pride swelling in my chest as I carried my boxes inside. Even though the air smelled faintly of dust and mildew, even though the floors creaked under my steps, even though it was clearly a fixer-upper, it was my home. My space, my future. But that honeymoon phase didn't last long. 2. The garage incident. On my very first day, I noticed something strange. As I pulled my car into the garage, I realized there was already a bike parked there. Not my bike, not something left behind by the previous owners. No, some stranger's two-wheeler, just casually taking up space in my garage. For a second, I froze, staring at it. Maybe I'd miscalculated? Maybe it wasn't really my space. But no, I'd bought the entire property. This was mine, which meant some random person had decided to use it as their personal parking lot. I dragged the bike out into the street. My muscles strained, the metal scraping slightly against the concrete as I shoved it outside the gate. And that same day, I called a welder and had a gate installed. A proper solid one with a lock. That night, as I was settling in, I heard a pounding on the gate. Heavy fists, relentless knocking. My heart jumped into my throat. I peered through the window and there he was, an angry man, shouting, demanding his bike back. He stood there for 15 minutes, knocking, yelling, pacing. But I didn't answer. I just watched. Eventually, he gave up, muttering under his breath as he rolled his bike away. I remember thinking, what kind of neighborhood did I move into? From that day on, I felt uneasy. It wasn't just the bike incident. It was the way people looked at my house, like it didn't belong to me. Like they had grown used to it being abandoned and couldn't, except that someone new had claimed it. Cars would block my gate. Strangers would walk right up to my walls. At first, I told myself it was just bad luck, just adjustment pains. I even painted a big no parking sign on the gate. And slowly, those small annoyances faded. But one problem never really went away. The neighbor, next door, lived an older man. He owned a 3-story house. He stayed on the bottom floor, while the top 2 were rented out to tenants. A retired mechanic, he had a sour expression, carved permanently into his face, the kind of man whose shoulders seemed heavy with resentment. Before I moved in, the previous owners had warned me about him. He wasn't happy we sold, they told me. He's been angry about it. Muttering, complaining, just, be careful. I brushed it off. I'm 6 feet tall. I've got 3 loyal dogs who bark at the sound of a falling leaf. I wasn't worried about some cranky old man. But oh, I should have been. A week after moving in, I was taking a shower when I noticed something unusual. The water pressure, normally strong and steady, suddenly dipped. It wasn't just a little weaker. It was so faint I had to step closer to the wall just to rinse off the soap. I frowned. Old pipes, I thought. Renovation issues, but then, underneath the sound of water trickling, I heard something else. A low hum. A mechanical drone. My neighbor's water pump. Now, in our city, most homes rely on pumps to push water up to rooftop tanks. Without them, the municipal water supply isn't strong enough to reach the higher floors. Pumps switch on automatically when the tank is low and shut off once it's full. So why was my shower suddenly weak the exact moment his pump turned on? My gut twisted with suspicion. I turned off the shower, waited. Minutes later, His pump shut down, and when I opened the tap again, perfect pressure. Coincidence? Maybe, but I didn't believe in coincidences. Not like this. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. My friends had mentioned water bills being oddly high, even when no one was living here. They'd blamed it on leaks in the old pipes, but those bills had been way too high for just a few drips and cracks. No, there was another explanation. Somewhere, somehow, my neighbor had tapped into my line. At first, I didn't want to believe it. Who does that? Who just helps themselves to another person's resources like they're entitled to it? But the signs were undeniable. Every time his pump switched on, my water vanished. Every time it switched off, my water returned. The more I tested it, the more certain I became. And with that certainty came a boiling anger. Here's the thing. In my country, water is cheap. I could wash 3 dogs every week, clean my car, water my garden, and my monthly bill still wouldn't hit $10. So no, this wasn't about the cost. It was about respect. It was about principle. This man, this bitter old landlord, had decided he was entitled to my property, my utilities, my resources, and he didn't even have the decency to hide it. He just kept doing it like I didn't matter, like I wouldn't notice, like I was too stupid or too scared to confront him. That sense of being disrespected, underestimated, stolen from, it sat in my chest like a stone. For days, I wrestled with what to do. Option 1, confront him. March up to his door, knock, and demand he stop. But I knew exactly how that would go. He'd deny everything. Maybe laugh in my face. Maybe yell and cause a scene, which could escalate into a feud. Option 2, go legal. Report it. But really, who's going to care about a $5 water bill dispute? The authorities had bigger issues to deal with. At best, I'd waste my time. At worst, I'd make an enemy out of a man who lived 10 feet away from me. Option 3, do nothing. Let it slide. Pretend I didn't notice. But every time I turned on my tap and felt that weak stream, I'd be reminded I was letting someone walk all over me. That wasn't an option. So I chose option 4. A plan so simple, so subtle, so absolutely devastating, it would solve my problem without a single word exchanged. Here's how pumps work. They're controlled by a ball valve in the rooftop tank. When the water level drops, the valve signals the pump to switch on. The pump runs until the tank fills. Then the valve shuts, the pump switches off, and everything is fine. But what happens when the pump switches on and no water comes? The tank never fills. The valve never closes. The pump runs endlessly, starving for water it can't pull. And anyone who knows machines knows. A pump running dry is a pump doomed to burn out. So the plan was simple. Wait until his pump kicked in, and then shut off my main water supply. No trespassing, no breaking laws, just a flick of a valve on my side of the fence. And then, watch. It was a Monday. I remember sitting by the window listening. At 10 p.m. nothing. Midnight, still nothing. By 2 a.m. I was dozing off when I heard it. The low mechanical drone. His pump. My heart pounded in my chest as I slipped outside, dogs padding quietly at my heels. I reached the valve, fingers trembling with anticipation, and slowly, deliberately, turned it shut. The pump roared on, louder now, straining. I could almost feel the tension in the air, the machine pulling against an empty line. My pulse raced. My mind whispered, this is it. This is the moment. I went back inside, climbed into bed, and waited. And oh, the chaos that followed. At first it was quiet. Just the hum of the pump, grinding, fighting against nothing. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, adrenaline pumping through my veins. Minutes passed, 10, 20, 30. The hum kept going, steady and stubborn, like an old man too proud to give up. And then, a faint smell in the air, burnt plastic. I sat up, inhaling deeply. Yes, that acrid, unmistakable scent of overheated wiring. My lips curled into a smile. By 3 a.m. the peace of the night shattered. Voices erupted from next door. Hushed at first, then louder, confused, agitated. I could hear footsteps, doors opening and closing, tenants muttering in panic. Why don't we have water? One voice shouted. Check the fuse box. Something's wrong. Another barked back. The shouting turned into arguing. My neighbor's gravelly voice cut through, defensive, angry, desperate. The tenants weren't having it. And then, as if the universe itself wanted to make the moment sweeter, the hum of the pump stuttered, coughed, and died. Silence. Followed almost instantly by another round of yelling. By morning, the The situation had escalated beyond anything I could have imagined. The entire 3-story house next door was without both water and power. Not just a minor inconvenience, completely out. In my country, that's not a small problem. Water and electricity are considered essential services, legally protected. Landlords are obligated to keep them running, no excuses. When they fail, tenants have the right to lodge official complaints. And believe me, these tenants wasted no time. By noon, I could hear one of them dragging bags down the stairs, muttering curses loud enough for the whole block to hear. The sound of a car door slamming echoed through the street, followed by the roar of an engine. One tenant was gone, just like that. The other wasn't leaving quietly. He was in full confrontation mode. I heard every word of his shouting match with the landlord. "You promised working utilities. This wiring is a death trap. I'm reporting you to the police." And the best part? The old man couldn't deny it. His face, when I glimpsed him pacing in his yard, Wickham was pale, his hands shaking. He looked like a gambler who had bet everything and lost. 2 days later, I got the confirmation I had been waiting for. The tenant had filed an official complaint. Here's how it works. The police in my city don't need a long court process for cases like this. If a landlord is in breach of tenant protection laws, they can fine him directly. Sure, he can appeal later, but in the meantime, he has to pay. And pay he did. $500. Now, $500 might not sound like much if you're thinking in Western terms. But in my country, that's a massive amount. A hit big enough to knock the wind out of a retired man living off tenant rent. And that was just the beginning, because along with the fine, he was forced to return the tenant's deposits. Both of them. Which meant more money out of his pocket. And on top of that, he couldn't legally rent out the place again until the wiring and plumbing were brought up to modern code, repairs that would cost him even more. The dominoes were falling, one after another, and I hadn't even lifted a finger beyond turning a valve. From my side of the fence, I had the best seat in the house. Every day I'd see him trudging back and forth, shoulders slumped, muttering to himself. No tenants, no income, bills piling up. He tried to fix things, of course. Called in a cheap electrician, fiddled with wires, barked orders at handymen, but it was all too little, too late. The damage had been done. His reputation as a landlord was in tatters. Word travels fast in neighborhoods like ours, and no one wanted to rent from the man who had let his tenants suffer without basic utilities. By the end of the week, I noticed something different. The yard that was usually cluttered with tools, spare parts, and junk was being cleared. Furniture was being carried out. The old man's daughter showed up, her face tight with frustration as she helped him load bags into a car. And then on Sunday, he was gone. Just like that. But before he left, there was one last moment. He showed up at my gate, his expression unreadable. No yelling, no accusations. Just a weary, almost resigned look. "Did you," he started, voice low, "turn off your water?" I met his eyes, calm, collected, not a trace of guilt in my tone. "Oh yeah," I said casually. "My tank had a leak. I shut it off until the plumber came by." For a moment, silence stretched between us. His face didn't change, but his eyes betrayed him. Behind that mask of composure was fury, frustration, and the crushing weight of knowing exactly what had happened, but being powerless to do a damn thing about it. He nodded once. "Oh, okay." Then he turned and walked away. That was the last time I ever saw him in that house. Here's the thing. Some people think revenge has to be loud, explosive, dramatic. But sometimes, the sweetest revenge is quiet, simple, effortless. This man stole from me. Not just water, he stole respect. He assumed I was too naive, too weak, too indifferent to stop him. And because of that arrogance, he lost everything. All it took from me was patience, a little observation, and the twist of a valve. In 1 week, his tenants were gone. His income dried up, his house was unlivable, and he was forced to move in with his daughter. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't call the police. I didn't even step onto his property. Karma handled everything for me. I just gave it a little nudge. I can't describe the satisfaction I felt the night I heard his pump whine itself to death, or the morning I listened to his tenants shouting, demanding answers, or the look on his face when he realized I knew. It wasn't just revenge. It was justice. The universe, balancing the scales. And every time I turn on my tap now, every time I feel the steady rush of water that belongs solely to me, I remember sometimes the smallest actions create the biggest ripples. Entitlement is a dangerous thing. People convince themselves they deserve what isn't theirs. They take and take and take, Until one day, the bill comes due. And when it does, it doesn't just sting, it destroys. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and subscribe for more true revenge tales. And tell me in the comments, what's the most satisfying revenge you've ever seen? Because remember, karma might be slow, but it never misses.